All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. Hello, Drew. Today we're going to talk all NFL. We're going to talk about some key injuries that matter and their ripple effects into different markets. We'll talk stock up, stock down with the Jags and the Cowboys. And then we'll close out with my favorite, the MVP market that has been repriced following the exploits of Patrick Mahomes and Brock Purdy on Sunday. But let's get into the injuries first, Drew. One of the bigger ones, arguably, Anthony Richardson, looks like he has a grade 3 AC joint sprain and could be placed on IR. Doesn't seem like it'll be season ending, but he could be out. I mean, their bye is 5 weeks or so from now, and he might be out that long. How does this impact your view on the Colts?
I mean, it's depressing. Anthony Richardson was a super exciting young player in a league where I would like more good quarterbacks. And this is, I mean, I don't want to overstate it. It's an AC joint injury. Like he's young enough. He's got enough, he's got few enough miles in terms of football played that he should bounce back far from this. But he's at a key stage of his development. You want him out there regularly getting practice time with his with the veterans on this team. You want him kind of continuing to learn and progress through how to be a professional quarterback. And this has the potential to stunt his development, which is disappointing because I was really excited to watch him play. It also has the potential to change the way he plays. He obviously does need to change the way he plays to some degree, so he's protecting his body more effectively. But at the same time, if that's what makes him special, you don't necessarily want to take a huge part of his toolbox away from him. So I'm nervous about this big time. Because I was like long-term buyer in Colts. I mean, obviously I wasn't, backing up the truck for Colts Super Bowl this year or anything silly like that. But I definitely love what I've seen so far from Shane Steichen. I like some of the kind of development of pieces that really didn't have high hopes for. Certain areas of this roster were a little bit questionable, a little bit murky, and they're overperforming so far this year. So there was reason to be optimistic about what the Colts could do. And this now puts a lot of cold water on that. Now, I say that while also recognizing that in the short term, Gardner Minshew is probably a small upgrade on Richardson just because he's got a very, very cool, calm understanding of the Shane Steichen system. He is, he is not making any kind of backbreaking mistakes, which are really kind of all you need to navigate what is a pretty soft schedule here for the Colts. So I don't think you have a major downgrade on the Colts, going from Richardson to Minshew. It's probably neutral, if anything, maybe a small uptick, but you know what it does? It narrows the bands big time. The Colts with Richardson they were a little bit of a volatile commodity. They had potential to really surprise you to the good any given week, and now I think you kind of know what you're getting. And so, this is a rematch game here for the Colts this week against the Jaguars. By the way, first rematch of the season so far in division, where we've seen these two teams play each other. We've seen these two teams match up against each other. Jaguars, by the way, closed 3.5-point favorites on the road to the Colts, and now they're 4.5-point favorites at home after winning that game convincingly, even though they gave up defensive touchdown. Okay. But I think realistically, this is, a spot like this, I would be inclined to bet the Colts if we had a little bit more upside with the offense. But now with Gardner Minshew in the game and kind of knowing what his ceiling is, and kind of considering how well the Jaguars defense is playing right now, I think this is now a pretty clear pass. And if you had any kind of appetite for betting Colts, and I think you need to do a little bit more, I need to at least chew a little bit more on the impacts of traveling home from London and what that could do to the Jags performance before getting involved there. Cause this is now a game where I'm Jags or pass.
Yep. We'll get into the Jags a bit later, but I think the Colts, they're a strange team because it's not very inspiring overall, but right now their defense is 16th in terms of EPA per play allowed, so really middle of the pack. And then the offense, I mean, it's difficult to project going forward just because we haven't seen a ton of Minshew. We haven't seen really any Jonathan Taylor outside of the 6 carries that he got. And so I think that between Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, behind an offensive line that is playing a lot better than it did last season. Weird thing, because I was sweating Taylor Offensive Player of the Year so much in 2021. I know a lot about Colts backup offensive linemen. I got a lot of feelings about various guys. Danny, I like strong opinions about Danny Pinter, their backup right guard from 2021. He can slide over defender on a pinch. But these guys, Ryan Kelly is back playing at an all-pro level. Braden Smith is a good right tackle. Quentin Nelson hasn't really been the same guy in 3 years now, but still is an above-average guard. And they're getting enough out of that line to, I think, potentially be a functional offense. And if you've got an average defense and a slightly below average offense in this division with this schedule, having already banked a 3-2 start, playing the Jags, that this is their biggest game in the division for the Colts, and the Jags are coming back from London for it after a huge game against the Bills. So I don't know, it kind of sets up pretty nicely. We've spoken about this before. If you like the Colts, Steichen, Coach of the Year, is one of the better ways in. I do think it's difficult because Campbell, McDaniel, and Shanahan, the big three in that market, they all won on the weekend. But I would say Steichen is the fourth favorite in that market. At least that's what my fares make it. So he's an interesting one to monitor. He's probably you have two kind of brand of Coach of the Year winners. One is like the John Harbaugh 2019, where you go 14-2 and just wreck the league. And then there's the Brian Daboll, which is, you have a 5, 6, 7 win projection and you exceed it by 4 wins and you're a feel-good playoff team. And so Steichen, I think, is probably the best of that kind of cadre of candidate, just because he's got the respect and no one thought the Colts would be good and they don't have much star power. You can completely put a line through Anthony Richardson for Offensive Rookie of the Year. I know books have still got him listed at like 20-1. He's not winning. If he's going to be out 3-4 weeks, he's already missed a lot of time. So he'd effectively be missing almost half the season minimum. So he's not winning that award. And we'll get into that award later in the week. Daniel Jones left the game in the second half with a neck injury, which feels like it was bound to happen at some point with the damage that he was taking. He did not return. Tyrod Taylor came in and looked a little bit better in relief, but it seems like the indications are from Brian Daboll that Daniel Jones is probably likely to play. I mean, behind this offensive line, does it really make that much of a difference, whether it's Jones or Tyrod?
I don't think so. I had lowish expectations for the Giants offensive line coming into the season, but obviously the absence of Andrew Thomas and the lack of any type of step forward for Evan Neal and, just really inexperienced and sloppy interior offensive line play. This Giants offensive line has pretty clearly been the worst in football through 5 weeks. There are other teams that you might want to throw in the mix. Sure. There's been a lot of really bad offensive line play. But the Giants are performing at such a low level that teams are incentivized just to come up with a couple of creative pass rushes, a little bit of misdirection, and you can really confuse these guys. And it's been an absolute disaster. You are right in that it has felt inevitable that Jones was going to get hurt at some point. He's still obviously pressing, like he's trying to play through this particular situation with this unit performing at this level, and it's not working. And this is a bad draw. I mean, the Bills are themselves at the wrong end of the injury bug right now, coming back from London without, I think the veteran leader, the kind of most important player on their defense, Matt Milano, done for the season with a leg injury. But they do have a pretty darn good pass rush with a couple of different layers of players that can really make you sweat. So that is not a good development here for the Giants to try to get back on track on the road. With this unit, I would say that if you get news that Andrew Thomas is going to go, and I don't have a good read at all on what's going on with that situation, because I thought a couple weeks ago he was trending in, and he is still just not practicing, not ready. There's something obviously more serious than they're letting on with his injury status. And one player is not going to fix a weak link system, right? You still have miserable center and guard play on top of Evan Neal doing whatever he's doing out there. So it's really a tough question for Brian Daboll to try to fix this. Saquon Barkley may eventually kind of come back at full strength, and people might try to tell you or make a case, well, Barkley's back, let's bet that. No thanks. He is way too boomer bust, and he's going to suffer from some of the same issues where he's behind an offensive line that's not creating running lanes for him. So this is an absolute disaster for the Giants to start this season. And honestly, I think they are going to have some tough decisions to make as we come into the trade deadline, because their schedule doesn't get any easier, starting with this Sunday night against the Buffalo Bills.
Yep, indeed. And I mean, the Bills, their pass rush is a little bit banged up on the defensive line. Daquan Jones injured his pec. Greg Rousseau was out. Leonard Floyd got banged up. Von Miller will see his snaps ramp up. But even if they are banged up, I mean, it's not like Seattle has a great pass rush and they sacked Daniel Jones 11 times or whatever. So I think this offensive line is just at the point where it's just completely non-viable, along with the Steelers, I guess, and the Titans. They've probably been a little bit better. It's about the work situation.
The Patriots deserve a mention.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on there, but they've been bad. Yeah.
I think without Andrew Thomas, this is number 32 in the league, even with my man Mark Glowinski of 2021 Colts offensive line fame. The Giants have given up 18 sacks in the last 2 weeks. That's not good. Okay, let's go to the Vikings and Justin Jefferson. Suffered a hamstring injury in the second half, didn't return. We talked about a little bit yesterday about how a couple red flags. One, the fact that he wasn't even able to go out there for the Hail Mary and limp down the field and try catch a jump ball to tie the game. Two, the fact that Kevin O'Connell talked about consoling Justin Jefferson after the game. You typically don't console someone when it's a minor tweak and they're back the next week. So I would guess that he's going to be out potentially for a while. And obviously this impacts the Vikings. We're going to play the Bears this week and then the Niners the week after, I believe, in San Francisco. So good luck taking on the Niners without Justin Jefferson if that is the case. I think in terms of ripple effects into the futures markets, offensive player of the year is the big one because Jefferson was, flirting with a pace to break the all-time receiving record. I think he was probably up against it anyway because his team was 1-4 and he was looking like, it's just harder for someone to go back-to-back when your team is, 8 wins worse or whatever. But if he's going to miss, 2 weeks, he's probably cooked in that market. And if he misses anything more, then he's completely cooked. But what do you make of the Jefferson injury?
No, I think 2 weeks would be 2 weeks of missed time does eliminate him from consideration. And I think that would actually probably be a good outcome based on sort of the read I'm getting from how seriously they were taking it on the sidelines and some of the comments after the game. And I think, beyond that, what do you do how do you rate this Vikings team now? Do they have enough redundancy? Do they have enough depth in the wide receiver room that they can overcome this? Probably. Jefferson is a game-breaking player. He's worth something to the spread, undoubtedly. But the way that Kirk Cousins is playing, the way the offensive line is protecting him, and the way that O'Connell is scheming, I think is better than what we've seen from them at times last year, a step forward in terms of a unit kind of finding their identity. And yesterday, if it were not for some pretty boneheaded decisions about mismanaging the clock, using all your timeouts long before you really should have, and really just kind of getting lucky with a little bit of help from the refs, then Vikings are in that game. That was a pretty, I don't want to call it a draw because obviously the Chiefs took a 14-point lead into the fourth quarter, so it was not a neutral game state at that point. But the Vikings, they have relatively similar production overall offensively, and they were just the at the behest of one turnover and one fourth down conversion that they needed to get that touchdown at the end to tie it. So, it was a closer game than it looked, I think, in terms of the result. And I would say that the Vikings going forward are probably a team that you still, if there's going to be a decent market downgrade in the absence of Jefferson, I think we're talking about buying low at these guys. I know they're 1-4. I know they've lost every one-score game they've been in so far. But if you hold up the 1-4 Vikings and the 1-4 Bears, there's obviously a pretty significant gulf between those two teams. I think the fact that with extra rest, the Bears are 3-point dogs to the 1-4 Vikings at home is notable. Expecting potentially some weather to influence this game. If you haven't already checked the weather report for Sunday, calling for a couple inches of rain in Chicago and a little bit of wind. So this is going to be a nasty one. We've seen the undertake a pretty aggressive amount of money. I don't think that's as much related to the Jefferson news as it is the weather. But I think ultimately you have to kind of now look at this Vikings team in the absence of Jefferson is still a little bit better than average, and then their defense is a little worse than average. So I think I would rate them at about a 500 team, a little under a 500 team in terms of a power rating. And I think they still are like notably better than the Bears, but weather is going to kind of influence me staying away from this game, I think.
Yeah, the issue is they just can't run the ball, and Madison has been not very good, and Cam Akers is there, and I wouldn't be surprised if Cam Akers is the lead back for that team in the next couple of weeks. TJ Hawkinson is obviously an elite pass catching weapon, and Jordan Addison can probably take on a little bit more of a load, but KJ Osborne isn't very good. I mean, this is it's kind of a clean control test to see how much, a superstar, tier 1A receiver impacts the team, because the Vikings are going to play maybe the worst pass defense in the league in Chicago this coming week, and then they're going to play one of the 3 best defenses in the league in San Francisco the following week. And if both of those are without Jefferson, we've got a pretty good idea about what the team can and can't do without him. By Kevin Cole's expected score metrics, the Chiefs should have won that game by 1 point, and they won by 7, which, watching the game, Mahomes made a couple of Mahomes-ish plays, and that really decided the game at the end. Travis Kelce, just quickly, I don't think we really need to dwell on this one. He had a lower ankle sprain in the second quarter of that game. He returned, caught a touchdown, looked like Travis Kelce. Short week is the only thing there. Maybe it swells up a little bit, but I would price him favorite to play against the Broncos.
Ooh.
Probably. Well, you don't think he's going to play?
I don't know, but if I'm pricing him favorite to play, I think it's kind of in the coin flip department because of the short week and because the Chiefs have the Chargers on deck next week. I don't think they can really risk re-injuring it. I think giving him 2 weeks to get right, not just because he's, this is now the second somewhat significant injury he's sustained this year. If you kind of you want to flip the other side of the coin, what happened in that Chiefs Vikings game? Like, there is still a huge lack of chemistry between Mahomes and the receivers downfield outside of Kelce. Like, if he goes down, then all of a sudden AFC starts to feel wide open.
Yeah, I think he'll ultimately be okay. Maybe he doesn't play against the Broncos because it's the Broncos, but if he was able to come back into the game and also just look as good as he did, and the fact that the game is at home, I don't know, we'll see. I think that the Chiefs will be fine either way. All right, before we get to some stock up, stock down, a reminder, Bills Mafia will be out in full force this Sunday night when Josh Allen and company take on Daniel Jones and the Giants in Buffalo. Coverage of the game starts at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. All right, stock up out of week 5. The Jags, Drew, your Jags, you staked your good name to them over the past 12 months or so. A pivotal win for them in the context of the AFC South, their chances of winning that division. And the thing there is that even though I think that they're probably pretty clearly the best team in that division, they have a brutal, relative to the other teams in the division, they have a brutal first place schedule. So just being able to steal that win all of a sudden changes the complexion of their place in that division pretty significantly, particularly given that the Titans had a loss, and the Titans were probably their biggest threat coming off that big win over the Bengals. It was a Jagsy win where it felt like they should have won by more, but they kept on shooting themselves in the foot and couldn't really put the game away. But Trevor Lawrence looked, I think, great overall, and the defense did enough. And they showed that they've got real weapons. ETN continues kind of his breakout season. He's a monster. Calvin Ridley got back on the horse. But what's your read on the Jags? What's their ceiling?
Yeah, Super Bowl, I still think, is possible. Now, maybe I'm getting a little excited here. And that's possible. But it does. I do like just the general, the fact that they've made it through the portion of the season that I was the most concerned about them, because you had new parts to the offense. Was it going to click? How long was it going to take it to click? Were they going to be able to overcome some of the issues on defense? And were they going to be able to get an offensive line back together that was kind of at full strength. Now, Cam Robinson did go down in the game against the Bills late. Did not see ultimately if that was like a long-term thing or what, and I would hoping for some good news there. But I think ultimately all of the questions I had about the Jags have effectively been answered to the good through 5 weeks. Beyond just the fact that they've won, 3 of their 5 games, and they are, we're the beneficiaries of a huge win in London. I still think the fact that you have so many different ways that you can hurt your opponents on offense it matters. Like they are multiples. They are not a team that you can sit down and game plan for and take away what they do well and then not get hurt otherwise. Like they can get you many, many different ways. And in particular against the Bills, what I thought stood out was when they needed to sustain drives late in that game. And they needed to, you do not want to give the ball back to Josh Allen. I don't care if he's having an off day. I don't care if the Bills are having an off day. Like you give him too many chances to come back on you, you're eventually going to pay the price. And the fact that they were able to play keep away and really kind of, continue to extend those drives in the second half to the tune of winning the time of possession battle 2-1. That's awesome. Like that was exactly what you needed to do in that game. And the score line 5-point margin of victory against the Bills, it's going to feel good because it was a big win against a tough opponent, but it probably should have been a bigger margin there. Like they left a ton of points on the field with some fluky fumbles by Lawrence. They have had a lot of those sort of fluky turnovers already this season. And so I think when people look at their offensive numbers, EPA per play in particular, that's influenced by some pretty penalizing stuff. It's one-off type of events that you can't necessarily expect to continue as you go through the season. So we're sitting at a place now where I think anyone doing this numerically, anyone with a kind of numerical focus on how to rate the Jags, probably underrating their offense a little bit, and I think is coming around to adjusting their defense to at least league average, if not a little bit better. They have played a very tough schedule so far. It's 9th toughest in the league, just by market rating. They have the 19th easiest remaining, so it's not like they're 19th hardest remaining, so they're on the correct side of where you want to be in terms of looking at your future schedule. And games between the Chiefs and the Bills are in your rearview mirror, and you're 1-1. So I think you got to feel pretty solid about that. This is a huge game this week for them against the Indianapolis Colts. This is, again, the second time these two teams have played each other, and for some reason the market is adjusting this game in the direction of the Colts relative to where we closed in game 1. And I think that's a little bit surprising considering the Colts are coming in this game without their top 2 pass rushers, or really without Kwity Paye and a banged up DeForest Buckner. I'm not really loving what I'm seeing from him in terms of quality play so far this season, and maybe I'm just being tough on him, but Kwity Paye matters, and he does not necessarily look like he's coming back at full strength. Shaq Leonard matters. He missed the game against the Titans, and not sure about his availability here, but just overall, they've taken some damage on the defensive side of the ball in Indy. And so I think that does actually open up an opportunity for the Jags to, even with the negative, rare that you're at home and you have a disadvantage travel wise, they do this week. But that said, I still think the matchups that you've got offensively against this beaten up Colts defense should be advantage Jags. And then, Lawrence continues to build into this season, continues to develop more chemistry with Calvin Ridley, and can kind of then tack into Christian Kirk utilization, Travis Etienne in the passing game. Evan Engram hasn't even really been asked to do much. Zay Jones hasn't been asked to do much. There's a lot that the Jags can kind of pivot into as we kind of continue to matriculate through the season here. And I think they're on the right trajectory to where we're going to kind of look at them as a top 5 offense once the dust settles at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think there's 2 ways to look at the Bills game. One is that the Jags went 10 of 18 on 3rd down and cured that problem that had really sunk them in previous games, and they were able, as a result of that, to stay on the field, and that's positive. The negative way to look at it is they went 10 of 18 on 3rd down and needed to do that to win a game by 5 points, and the Bills averaged 7.2 yards per play, the Jags 5.8. The Bills couldn't convert 3rd downs relative to Jacksonville. It depends. I think the question with the Jags is how good is their defense? Because I think the offense kind of is what it is, where super talented, Lawrence is the real deal. I think it probably settles into a a bottom of the top 10 type of offense with the ceiling to get better if the offensive line improves. But the defense is the one where, they've got Tyson Campbell and Darius Williams playing at really good level at corner, even though Stephon Diggs kind of cooked Tyson Campbell. Josh Allen, the Jags' Josh Allen is having a great season at edge. If this team just had Aiden Hutchinson instead of Trayvon Walker,
oh my gosh,
it would be frightening. But they took Trayvon Walker. So I don't know. Like right now, by EPA per play, this is the 11th best defense in the NFL, having played the Bills and the Chiefs as part of that. So I think this is a pretty solid defense. I think they're pretty clearly the best team in the AFC South, but the market right now is only treating them as like 1 point better than the average team on neutral field. So that is what it is. The problem with the Jags is that even though they have, to your point, a slightly easier than average schedule, the Colts and the Texans play just incredibly easy schedules. And the Jags, even though their schedule isn't that difficult, it's kind of like every game is like at New Orleans, home Tennessee. Like these aren't layups.
Right.
The Colts game, where they're only 4.5 point favorites, being shaded to 4, and the travel is part of that. But that's probably going to be the game they're most heavily favored in until week 17, because there's just a lot of, they play home to San Francisco, at Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, at Cleveland, Baltimore, at Tampa. These games are all going to be kind of within a field goal or so. And the Jags might be slight favorites in a lot of them, but there are no real layups. So they're a strange team, but I do think
what?
they are rightfully favored.
You know what, Jay? That sounds to me like a team that is going to be entering the playoffs battle tested. And honestly, like just one of the, and we haven't even, I don't know if we said this out loud, and boy, oh boy, like if they came into the trade deadline and they make a deal for like a disgruntled elite pass rusher or something, oh my God, that would be the just music to my ears. But I think one of the reasons that you have to be a little bit kind of eyes open and, understand why there's upside with this Jags team. They've already got Trevor Lawrence's playoff stinker out of the way in a half of football against the Chargers and still won that game. Like there is definitely some, potential for this team to, continue to build and to take themselves seriously as a title contender, I think. And I just don't see anywhere near that upside in the other AFC South teams.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of upside, none of these other AFC South teams are going to do anything. I think the other good thing is just that the Bills have lost half their team, and Miami's corners can't stop anyone, and the Chiefs don't have any receivers. So it looks like kind of all of these teams are worse than the Bills and Chiefs were last season, maybe even maybe not the Bengals last season.
AFC North winner might have 9-10 wins. Like what's the over under on wins for the AFC North winner right now for you?
I don't know, like 10 flat, maybe.
10 flat, yeah,
about that. But yeah, certainly. I mean, the Steelers are in the mix for that division, and they're the worst team I've ever seen. All right, let's get to a team that looked like the worst team I'd ever seen on Sunday night, the Dallas Cowboys, who have drifted to win the NFC East. They are now north of plus 200 most places. They're -2 home favorites to the Chargers. The Chargers are at home. Cowboys favored there. The total is 50. What do you read into the loss to San Francisco? Did they just come up against the juggernaut, the best quarterback in the NFL, and had no answer, or was there something that worked?
I mean, you want to go and win a game in Brock Purdy's house in the month of Brocktober, you better bring a better effort than that. And by the way, your slip up on Monday night's location, there'll probably be more Cowboys fans than Chargers fans there, if we're being honest. It's probably going to sound like a home game for the Cowboys. But at the same time, like, I'm not sure Cowboys fans are like really feeling super about this team right now. And another primetime loss is not going to necessarily do anything good for Mike McCarthy and his job security in Dallas. I'm not saying that they're going to make an in-season change or anything, but they're not necessarily. I think that situation is a lot more fragile than the market realizes. And they need to win badly. The weird thing about the Cowboys is they are pretty clearly front runners. If they're out there doing well and they are playing well in a given game, then they are going to put you away comfortably with margin probably. And if it's not going well on a given game, it doesn't seem like their plan B has much of a hope of getting them back into a game. And the best I can kind of describe it is, it feels like under Mike McCarthy, the offense wants to be ball control, short stuff, high efficiency stuff, not really take chances early. They want to just kind of let the game, let things come to them. And in particular, if their run offense is not contributing, then there's a lot of 3 and outs. There's a lot of drives that just feel like they're going nowhere. And all of a sudden now the pressure is on Dak to make plays in third and unmanageable that are just low probability plays. And when you're up against a good defense and you're in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9, like you're cooked. Even with, if your offensive line was at full strength, maybe it would be different, but they're not. And so I think, the best I can describe it is they're waiting too long before they start to take some shots, to start to take some chances on offense, and it's hurting them. The defense also, like, they have some pretty clear weaknesses covering the middle of the field. You kind of looked at the depth chart preseason and you're like, oh my god, they got all pros everywhere except right here. And right there, if you can identify it that easily and you can scheme your offense to try to take advantage of that, and you're Kyle Shanahan and you have a dozen plays off the top of your head that will take advantage of that, then you can make this defense look pretty pedestrian. So I'm not seeing enough of kind of multiple ways that this team can try to win a game, and really in particular play well at a negative game state. We have seen that now twice, and it has been disastrous. The other 3 games where they have been in a positive game state, they have been otherworldly good, and that's spooky. So what do we do with this information? I think realistically, you just have to look at this team as a bet on or against in the second half of football games, depending on how the first half is going, until they start to show you that they have kind of come through with more multiple ways to play football. Like the first time this team comes back from a multiple score deficit, I think we're going to get on it here on Sunday and Monday and be like, yes, Cowboys, they did it. They finally showed us something, right? But until then, this is a team that I think you have to have sincere concerns about. And when we translate this to what's going to happen in the month of January, they're going to beat the Niners? I don't know about that. They're going to beat the Eagles? Maybe. I mean, are they going to beat the Lions? They might be in, when we kind of get to that point, pretty clearly the 4th choice, because wild card is not going to color them well, trying to go on the road and win playoff games against those other 3 teams. So, I'm nervous. I want this to be a buy low for the Cowboys, but the fact that they basically have exactly the same bad situational spot coming up this week as they had last week, they didn't elect to stay west and kind of use this week as like a mini training camp and really kind of get their guys together. They have plenty of facilities on the West Coast. I don't know if you know this, but their training camp is in Oxnard, California. Don't know why they didn't just stay in Oxnard and do a full kind of mini camp of practice and have their best effort against the Chargers, but they're electing not to do that, and I think that might ultimately bite them. So cautiously pessimistic right now about the Cowboys figuring this out, and I think a poor performance against the Chargers, who are coming off a bye, and obviously they are not travel weary, is a little scary, especially if you're kind of on Mike McCarthy hot seat watch.
Yeah, with they're such a strange team, or at least they have been through 5 weeks, because they've won 3 games by a combined score of 108-13, and then the other 2 games they've gotten blown out by 48 points. And I think people look at the Cowboys and say, they haven't beaten anything. It still matters to blow out anyone 108-13. You can't just say that, the Giants and the Jets and the Patriots are terrible, which they are. Still, to be able to decimate those teams like that, there's some signal in that. At the same time, it feels like, and I haven't looked into this, but it feels like the splits for Dak Prescott against good defenses and bad defenses are really extreme, because when he looks off, like he did on Sunday night, like he did in the divisional round against San Francisco, he just looks unplayable. And then when he looks on, like he did, for instance, I guess this is a decent defense, so if remember it was banged up. When he played the Eagles at the end of last season when Jalen Hurts was out in that game, he looked like the best quarterback in football, and it was like he's never going to miss a pass. So with Dak, I don't know if that's just something about the type of player that he is or his style or what it is, but certainly can't seem to figure out the San Francisco defense. And the biggest issue for the Cowboys now is that, like, they're 2 games behind San Francisco and the tiebreak. So that's like good night for going past San Francisco in the standings. Dallas have also got to play Philadelphia twice still. Got to play at Buffalo, at Miami, home Detroit. So it's getting late quickly for Dallas. They can still win those 2 Eagles. They're probably going to need to win both Eagles games to win the division now, which they can do. But certainly feeling less bullish about the Cowboys now than a couple of weeks ago.
I will just say real quick, the Eagles do have an absolute schedule hell coming up. Like the Eagles could come back to the Cowboys for sure. But I think we're living in a world right now where NFC East winner is going to be the 3 seed at best.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how the Lions go. All right. A reminder that Bet the Edge isn't the only show every weekday during the NFL season. You can check out the Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, Connor Rogers, and myself. It airs live at Peacock at noon, re-airs at 4 p.m. Eastern, and is available on our NFL on NBC Sports YouTube channel, as well as wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, MVP market, which flipped around after Josh Allen lost in London, giving him a second loss, and he's got, I think, the hardest schedule in football remaining on top of those banked 2 losses, and he falls a game behind Tua and the Dolphins. The Bills are the 7th seed right now in the AFC with the hardest schedule still on tap, so that hurts Allen a lot. Certainly not putting a line through him, but to me, he drifts pretty significantly yesterday. Patrick Mahomes is the favorite in the market at plus 350, Tua plus 500, Allen and Hurts 6-1, Purdy 7-1, and that's really your top tier. And then there's a drop off to Herbert, Lamar, Lawrence, CMC, those type of guys. What's your read on this market?
Yeah, Buffalo Bills, the Pittsburgh Steelers, just a couple of 3-2 teams. Yeah. No, I think our read on this has been pretty good in terms of market entry, getting best price on a couple of these guys. And if I had to say right now, how does this play? It's probably, as maybe I'm being short-sighted, but I think it's a 3-man race between Mahomes, Allen, and Purdy.
Okay. Not Tua. You're ruling out Tua.
I am. And some of my concern about Tua is the fragility. If I almost am willing to say I'm fine betting against, I'm fine. I guess I'm fine being against him at this price in this market, considering we have seen 5 good weather games and 5 games, including one where they scored 70 points. The Dolphins have put together 2 top 15 all-time performances now in offense in week 3 and week 5. And some of that you only aren't seeing him pop at on some of the numbers because he had some bad turnovers in there as well. So I think ultimately is the credit, if the Dolphins do reach their highs, they're probably most likely it's going to go first to McDaniel, it's going to go second to Tyreek Hill in Offensive Player of the Year, and it's going to go third to Tua. And that's just the way it is in terms of his his anchoring and his prior. And I think the he's going to have to get the 1 seed over Mahomes to beat him out. He's going to have to win the East over Allen to beat him out. And I think both of those guys might ultimately be stung by the fact that Purdy's having an all-time season here.
Yep. I think there are 2 bets to make at these prices and other prices available in the market, and that's on Mahomes and Purdy. Purdy now, I think there was an awakening in America on Sunday night as to how good this guy is, and that was the best performance of his career. But now people are starting to treat him with the pedigree of a guy who can win MVP. Peter King wrote in his Monday morning column about how Brock Purdy is the MVP frontrunner. Peter King is a voter, and I think pretty representative of sentiments. And the fact that he is valuing Purdy like that, I think is pretty instructive. I think Purdy's just the most deserving case at the moment. Like he's leading the field in EPA per play, QBR, passer rating. He's on the best team. So I would still have Mahomes' favorite, just because Mahomes is 4-1 right now, and has gotten through this early period with his receivers struggling. And to bank that 4-1 start, his stats aren't great, but they're good enough that the rest of the season, if he's just the best quarterback in football, which you'd project him as because he is the best quarterback in football, he's Patrick Mahomes, then he'll be right there. So I make Mahomes the favorite. I make him plus 225. I make Purdy plus 350 and the second favorite. I have Tua as the third favorite just because I think the Dolphins are now more likely than the Bills to win the AFC East, just with that win up on them, being 4-1 versus 3-2 and having a slightly easier schedule. Also, I think Tua probably has the best offense in football, narrowly in front of the 49ers, which I think will help. He'll have more gaudy volume stats than Purdy, but Purdy's efficiency. Brock Purdy's never lost a game that he's finished. Like, he's getting ridiculous.
Unbelievable.
This is the team of the season, and I think that they have a chance to lap a few awards between Purdy MVP, Shanahan Coach of the Year, like Lamar and John Harbaugh did in 2019. That double, which I think is kind of a parallel for this situation. And then I think McCaffrey's the favorite for Offensive Player of the Year. So all in 9 is everything, Drew.
I'm lost for words to come up with the right qualifiers for Purdy at this point. His numbers speak to the excellence that you're seeing. The fact that he's doing this off of elbow surgery is like mind melting. This guy went under a knife in March. Like I'm lost. And I will also say that like there is a very decent chance that there will be some regression because he has 1 turnover this year, 0 picks, one fumble lost. If he finishes with an Aaron Rodgers-esque 4 picks on the season, which it's not crazy, like 5 games already banked here. Like he's only got 12 more. Yeah, he might not be playing at the end of the season anyway. But yeah, I mean, like he's on pace for just an all-timer. So yeah, I don't think it's wise to doubt it at this point. Surely.
Yeah, and here's the thing: just say Brock Purdy, say his name was Dak Prescott, or I don't know, Jalen Hurts, or someone who came into the season with a bit more pedigree and was having the exact same season on this team with the exact same stats. Yeah. We'd say that they're like plus 190 to win MVP, or like that type of rate. That's how good Purdy's stats are, and that's how good this team is. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think the lack of pedigree is a real thing anymore, particularly after Sunday night where he proved that he could absolutely carve up an elite defense by making not just by yak, like he was making next level MVP type of throws, like the dig routes, the Ayuk, like these are legitimate throws. This is not just dumping off to McCaffrey and having him go 60 yards, which I think was the book on Purdy. Purdy's not a game manager. Purdy last year's probably was like a gunslinger where he's just taking shots. And now he's still doing that, but he's doing it in a controlled way. And I think that it's going to be him and Mahomes at the end of the year. Yeah. Tua, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, they certainly can't be written off, but I think Mahomes and Purdy, I think that's your tier 1 at the moment. All right, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. Please rate and subscribe if you're listening in podcast form. And also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you tomorrow.